Hi everybody, Colin Stevenson here, joined by my hero, my sensei, John Lenhart. Hi John.
Hi.
Now today's a very interesting show we have for you. It's the first of a three-part series again, John. You know we like our short mini-series. And today we want to talk about the approach of psychology, or the approach, the model or the theories of psychology onto how it's kind of brought out to the people. And I would love to hear, we're on similar pages with this, John. You know a lot more about the science behind it than I do. I feel it, you know it, and this is where you and I connect. So if you would like to kind of tell us some more about that, I would love to hear it, please.
Yeah, I'll actually start with a story. So what happened was 25 years ago, I did some research and figured out about the brain and the nose. And I've shared this before, but I found out that the brain doesn't work the way everybody thinks it does. And that got declared a trade secret, and I wasn't allowed to share that information with anybody. And in doing that, I started looking more at how the brain worked, and I decided to come up with a model for how the brain actually worked. It took me 10 years, and what I did was I had this model for the brain, and it looked like a wiring diagram. There's like 100 arrows, and all the parts of the brain are listed, and it was on one sheet of paper. And at that time, I was working with 3 psychology students from 3 different universities, and one of the students wanted to share my theory as part of their presentation, as part of like a little mini thesis. And when she passed it by her teacher said, I want to see this and I want to talk to the guy, which is great. I wanted to talk to these psychologists too. So this is 15 years ago. So what happened was I go into his office, I hand him my sheet of paper. He takes a look at it and he says 2 things. He says, number one, he goes, there's nothing on this sheet of paper that we don't already know. We know everything you've written on the sheet of paper. He goes, but I've never seen it on one sheet of paper. So that's the thing, is that first of all, what I did was I did a model looking at the entire brain and how the brain interacts with each other. And that's known as systems thinking. And we'll talk about this down the road, but I'm a systems thinker, and I look at the whole, brain in order to understand the parts of the brain. He said, this is not how we do science. This is not how we look at things. We look at discrete parts of the brain, and what we do is we basically say something happens outside the environment, it damages that part of the brain, and that's why the behavior comes out. He goes, your model is basically starting inside out, and you have these 4 thought processes, basically these 4 sub-programs that determine everything. That's not how we do science. And so his second comment was this. He said, stop doing this. You are wrong. So what happened was I didn't stop doing that, obviously, and I kept working on that. 10 years later, a magazine, Neuroscience magazine, came out that summarized the biggest findings in the year 2015. And the editor at the front said the biggest finding was, we learned that we shouldn't have been looking at discrete parts of the brain to determine our behavior, but we should have been looking at mental circuits, internal circuits. Literally what I presented to that psychology professor 10 years before. And I was told I was wrong. 10 years later, they go, no, this is the way to do it. And what that speaks to is the approach. So what I want to talk about is what is the approach that psychology and all of these sciences take? And it's a very effect to cause approach. Basically, there's 4 steps. If you think about it, the first thing people do is they look at all the results. They look at the good behavior, and they look at the bad behavior, what they see.
Yep.
And they take all the good behavior and they put it on one side, and they take the bad behavior and put it on the other side. Or you could say desirable behavior and undesirable behavior. People do this in business. What's the desirable effects? What's the undesirable effects? The second step is they try to find the application or the actions. They look at all the undesirable and they say, what actions or what background? Were these people raised a certain way, a certain economic income, certain things? Were these people raised a certain way, they're looking for a cause, a physical cause that led to this effect. And they'll get some statistics and things will kind of tend towards, there's a 6% chance it's this, there's a 5% chance it's that. And then they try to get it down to what I'd call a principle. They try to get down to an intangible thing that works at that context. And so that's what people do is, so when they look at ADHD, for instance, they say, well, we see this behavior, so we think it's something in the brain doing this. We're not really sure, but here's how we categorize ADHD. There's 21 symptoms. How many of these do you got? You're more or less that. So they're just looking at appearance and they're not looking at the real cause. And so now they could be attributing a wrong cause to this appearance. And we talked about this already with autism. There are people who have autism, and there are people who are perceivers who have had trauma, and they demonstrate autistic effects. And then when we help these perceivers repair that trauma, they no longer are categorized as autistic. Did I cure an autistic person, or were they misdiagnosed?
Yeah, and you've touched on so many things there that I know that there's going to be psychologists screaming at this screen just now while they're watching it, because it all comes down to how we learn, and it all comes down to what we are told. And if it comes from one source of everyone putting their theories in, they kind of draw a mean line through the middle of it, and that usually becomes the answer as to how we're told or taught. Now, from that mean line, there's so much going on each side of it. And this is what I don't believe is looked at in terms of putting people forward, in terms of diagnosis, in terms of changing the effects through going back to the actual cause. Now, I believe that the causes are more intangible than tangible. And you and I connected about 14 months ago, and we really have hit it off, and I maybe wasn't as in fact, I tell you now, I wasn't as in flow then as what I am now, because I always started to look for the tangible causes, the tangible things to change. And all that had to change was by me understanding my intangible and how that affected others and how others affected me by that. Now, I know that I'm probably racing ahead with going into, but what I feel in terms of psychologists, they're there, they definitely serve a purpose. They genuinely, know their stuff, that the people that have learned and made the effort, they definitely have a lot of tools that they're able to do things for people. I believe that it's the application of these that doesn't always work because of the one-size-fits-all policy. And I believe that there's so many people that could be repaired, as you just spoke about. Did we fix that? Or was it misdiagnosed? I believe that people's brains can be repaired if they were to add to the psychology. So it definitely helps, and it's definitely set for purpose. But I believe that there's something else could be added to the application to allow that to help people more, so that they don't relapse or they don't go back, because then they can then go forward with gaining energy.
Right, and I think next time I'll have the exact quote on this, but this is a perfect place to talk about this, because I think you're right about the cause. The cause is intangible. So there was a book written a couple of years ago called The 7 Deadly Sins of Psychology. I even wrote the author. He never wrote me back, so he's been unconsciously confronted. However, this is well known because one of the issues is they've taken the 100 most influential psychological experiments ever done, and they can't recreate a good number of them. I can't remember if it's 25% or 33 or 50%. It's not more than 50, but they cannot recreate the experiment that they're basing all this stuff on. Why? Because they don't have the right causes. And in the book, The 7 Deadly Sins of Psychology, they have this great analogy by Richard Feynman. And Richard Feynman, I believe, is one of the 10 greatest scientists ever. I'm a huge Richard Feynman fan. And Richard Feynman had this example where he explained, he called it the cargo cult mentality. And this is the problem that we have, not only in psychology, but a lot of these sciences, is how they do this. So the example is during one of the wars in one of the islands in the Southeast or Asia Pacific or whatever, there was basically, what happened was they had a runway built, they had lights on the runway, they had like a little hut with a control tower, a guy, radio, American, and they used to get these cargo planes flying over and dropping shipments on the runway. And so the natives basically looked up to the sky, stuff fell out of the sky, and it was all awesome stuff. It was good stuff. Whether it's food or medicine, it was great stuff. The war is over, the Americans leave, they come back, I don't know how long, a year or so later, and what do they find? The natives had built a runway. They put little candles, torches next to the runway. They built a little grass hut. They had a man standing and put stuff on his ears, and they just kept looking to the sky. Like, they're doing all the causes, right? That's the causes of why stuff falls in the sky. That's everything I see. Why aren't we getting the same effects?
Yeah.
Because we're not doing the intangible causes. There's a bunch of intangible causes you don't see.
Yes.
Do you want to know the intangible cause? So I can tell you what a psychologist is saying right now. Then what are we supposed to do? What do you not want? You don't want us to observe people? You don't want us to look at the effects? You don't want to try to, what are we supposed to do? How about a model for the mind and the brain?
Yes.
Would you pay a mechanic to fix your car if he couldn't explain to you how a car worked? That's why this book was really written. If you look at it, one of the things he says at the start is psychology is liable to become a science 100 years from now. We look back on and go, what was that?
Yeah.
And the reason we're going to do that is everybody's going to say, how did you come up with a science when you couldn't explain the cause? How did you come up with this? We would never do this in any other field. We would never, talk about chemistry without a Bohr's model for the atom. That would never happen. But we have Bohr's model for the atom, and all of chemistry is based on that. How is everybody feeling good about psychology and psychologists when they cannot give you their model for the mind and the brain, the thing they're working on?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm going to go off topic to go back on topic for a second, right? Because I am looking at things. So years ago, what we used to do for advertising is we used to pay a company, they used to look at the psychology, they used to then go out and they used to pull in people's heartstrings, brain strings, and they used to get paid a lot of money to be able to do that. Now what you'll find is the advertising's still there, but what we're finding is normal everyday people, such as influencers, are now able to do the same job for less money. Okay? Now, taking back onto subject again, what we're actually doing is we're putting psychologists through university for years, and they go 4 to 7 years, depending on how far they want to go, to learn their trade, to learn all the secrets, the workings, the going on. And then they go and they'll sit in their practice or online or whatever they do to help people or diagnose. Now they're doing courses such as CBT, NLP, okay? And so cognitive behavior therapy, neuro-linguistic programming. And these are part of the psychology sector. But do you know that they are now using this, that you can learn this online for $7, I've seen as the cheapest course, to be certified to go and help other people, right? Now, I know that we're going off topic again, but what I want to do, the reason I want to discuss this is It's now everything's getting broken down so far that there's no, it's coming way off track for everybody. And if they had a model that they could stick to, so no matter what, other cause that they're having or the other diagnosis tool or any of these things, if they could stick to a cause on one track and no matter where they come off the road, they can come back to here at any time and really make a difference in their life, I believe that this would change the whole world.
Right. And actually that wasn't off track for me at all, because it brings up my final point. So I said there was 4 steps, and I talked about 3. So you have the result, you have the application of what you do, and then you have some sort of principle. The 4th step is the truth. The truth, what we learned, through our previous videos, is the truth is the principle that applies in every context. It's always there. So if you think about it, there's one truth. I will tell you at another time, there's 4 contexts. There's always 4 contexts in every situation. If you don't have 4, you're missing one. And if you have more than 4, you took one of the contexts and broke it up. There's a lot of applications. So what you're saying, so here's where the psychologist, so which side of this diagram do you want to work on? If you want to work on all the applications, that's a lot of information to know. You're going to have to go to school 4, 7, whatever years, because there's so much information to cover every single thing, and you're going to wear yourself out. But you can pull a piece of that out and charge $7 for it. You can pull a piece of it out and charge $7 over here. So that's what's happening. Everything you're talking about is focused on this application end. It takes a lot of years to learn a lot of different applications, and a specific application, I can sell you a specific application for $7. I'm not going to sell you all, but I'm going to sell piecemeal. Or you can get down to the truth. The thing that always applies, is the model, is how the mind and brain actually works. The thing that always applies in chemistry is Bohr's model for the atom. If you get that, then you come up through any situation and you instantly diagnose it. So that's the thing, is that there's nothing wrong with what the psychologists have learned. They've learned a lot of applications. They've learned a lot of context. That's great. Why wouldn't they supplement it with how it works? Would it be wrong for a mechanic to learn about a lot of different cars? No, it'd be great. But each car runs on certain basic principles that are the same to all of them. So why are psychologists so afraid to embrace this model I'm talking about? Because I'll tell you this will really be the last thing I say, is when I share this model, some people attack me. That's called ad hominem. And I would say, they'll just say, you're not a psychologist, you're blah, blah, blah. Some people go, well, if you were right, wouldn't everybody believe it? That's called ad populum. For thousands of years, both of those were known as logical fallacies. Anybody who attacks you personally or appeals to numbers is failed logic, and they're a bully. The first sign someone's a bully is they don't address the information you're talking about. They address you personally, or they address other people. They don't want to deal with the information. If you have the truth, they don't want to deal with it. I have never, ever, ever met a professional who has ad hominem or ad populum to me, because they both know that's the end of their career. People who are professionals know saying the stupid things that most people say would be the end of their credibility. So that's how I know these bullies do these logical fallacies, because they don't have any credibility to begin with. They just have intimidation. That's all they can do. But none of these professionals say, show me how that works. Help me do that. None of them are growth mindset. None of them want to admit where they're wrong or admit how they could be better. They're scared and they're holding on. I've done all this research. I've done all this information. I just want to hold on to it. I don't want to hear that something wrong. And I know better not to attack it publicly, but I am not going to embrace it. And that's the shame, because it's hurting all of us. I love to say, I've met with several mayors of several towns, and I've said to them, who ought to be your happiest and mentally healthiest people in your town? They should be your psychologists and counselors, because you're counting on them to help other people be happy and mentally stable. And they can't give to people more than they have. If your psychologist and your counselors are not mentally stable and happy as Colin and I, I'll let you figure out the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for that, John. And I would just like to add one last thing onto the end there. There was a certain female psychologist, and she's had quite a career of it as well, that we spoke to last week. And it was actually her that spoke to me about what she felt with the whole psychology system. And I think we'll talk about that as we move forward in this three-part series. We won't put her name out there and throw her in the deep end, but we will be able to, speak about what she said and allow other people, it might even bring other people to come forward, and it's like some people will be standing in the shadows, but wanting to come into the light type thing. And there will be other people that will be just a category no, but again, we can warm up to other people. So thank you for part one. Looking forward to the next part, and I will definitely speak to you next week. Thanks, John.
Bye.